Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Show and Tech. I'm Devin, this is Mike.
And today we got a couple cool things for you. If you're a PC builder, I'm going to be going over SATA cables. And then also Devin's got a mini Stream Deck to go over today. So
Yeah, it's going to be a couple completely different topics for a change.
yeah, absolutely.
I feel like our last couple of ones have kind of kept coinciding,
Yeah.
and we didn't even talk about it.
Right, exactly. And, it's kind of funny how we're just always on track like that. But, yeah, so mine kind of ties into some of the stuff I was previously talking about with the SATA decks and all that.
Yeah.
But,
Sure.
So why don't you go ahead and start out with yours?
Okay, sure. All right, so like Mike said, this is a Stream Deck Mini. This particular one is $80, has 6 buttons on it, and this is made by a company called Elgato, which if anybody is into any type of streaming or
Right.
even kind of watch a streamer, kind of regularly, you've probably heard Elgato because
For sure.
they kind of kicked off the whole streaming products, like segment line.
Yeah, they're definitely a well-established brand
Yeah.
within that space.
Did you know Corsair bought them?
I did not.
Yeah, Corsair owns Elgato now.
Huh.
So,
Okay.
I kind of feel like that just gives a little more clout, too, because, Corsair is a pretty reputable brand, in the PC market.
Absolutely. It's like when I started out with my first PC build, I used Corsair, and I use it specifically for the fact, now things have gotten a little clouded these days, but if you ever had any type of problem with one of their products, you didn't even have to bother their tech help to send something in and get it replaced. Like you
Right.
literally just shipped it to them, and they had you a replacement within the next 3 days.
Right. So, with that being said, this is obviously, more marketed and geared towards streamers, but this
Right.
actually has a ton of uses. If you look here, like I said, this one has a 6 button on the front here,
Yeah.
and, they got a pretty, there's no like click to it, but they've got a real good feel feedback to them. These are pressable,
Yeah.
and these are actually little LCDs.
Okay. Yeah.
So when you go in, to the software and you set up your buttons, you can set up your own custom little icons for it, or it'll kind of have like its own little default for whatever type of, macro or button you're assigning
Right.
this to. So it's really, really versatile in that way.
Well, and on the, you said that it doesn't really, like, it's got good feedback, but it doesn't really have a big click to it, which that's great because when you deal with microphones and streaming and stuff, you don't want a bunch of stuff that every time you push a button, it's going to.
Right, like a clicky mechanical keyboard.
I love
Yeah.
mechanical keyboards, but they're not great for streaming.
Right. But these also come in 3 different sizes. There's the mini, of course, which is this one here, the 6 buttons. There's the standard Stream Deck.
Right.
It has 15 buttons on the front.
Yep.
That one goes for about $150, give or take. If you can find it on sale or not, maybe. But the regular MSRP is $150 on that. And then they've got a ginormo one. It's got 32 buttons on it. And price is ginormo on that one too.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
$250 for that ginormo one. So
I mean,
for 80
32
bucks,
buttons for streaming, though. That's
yeah. So for $80, I want the baby brother here.
right.
So the main reason I ended up buying this because I was really, like we've said multiple times, I wanted to get into the streaming,
Yeah.
game streaming and whatnot. I just haven't been able to yet because of the internet, but that'll hopefully be changing soon. But what I was setting this up with, I integrated it with my OBS software. And this will work with like XSplit or anything like that as well.
Right, yeah.
But a lot of people use OBS because it's an open source, super stable, super customizable software. But if you're ever watching like a game streamer, if you ever notice like if they say like, hey, I'm gonna take a quick break, the screen scene will change.
Right, yeah.
Or if they're switching over from like gameplay to like hey, let's just chat for a second. That kind of change the background.
Right, yeah, switches.
Gets a little more immersiveness to the stream or whatnot. You can set up like individual buttons to do these scene changes like that. They'll mute your microphone. You can do that with a button.
Right.
You could have it set up where switching applications and some other just stuff outside of that I've seen. You can set this up with macro. Type your own macros out and assign that
cool.
your
Yeah.
own individual macro. To a key. So I mean, there's almost endless possibilities of what you can kind of do with this because I mean, it physically it's just a macro key that it sends a signal to your computer and makes it do it.
Heck yeah. Now, will that work with, because kind of like a soundboard too, where if you wanted to put in like a reverb effect or something, would it do something like that?
If you can like assign a hotkey to a computer to do that, you can essentially do it with this too.
Okay.
So that way you can kind of get a visual look, and it's
Right.
And like with the smaller one here, I had some different stuff. I was kind of needing a little more than 6 buttons at the point.
Yeah.
And what's cool about this, you can actually nest those things into a folder. You can actually assign like a folder to the button. So when you click the button, it'll go into that folder, and there's your keys in that folder.
Okay, cool.
So you can actually kind of expand it, and that obviously works on the bigger ones as well.
Yeah.
If you need more than 32 keys.
Yeah, more than 15 or 32 for some reason.
So, but yeah, I mean, like the versatility, I mean, it's pretty great. I was using it a lot, just recently, just as at my computer as a hotkey, to be able to switch between headphones or my desktop speakers.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Like if I had headphones on and, I didn't want to do it, I just needed to switch to my desktop audio for something because maybe something was with the headset or, I just wanted to hear it from a different sound, just pull the headphones down, just click that button, bam, it's right back there. And then when I'm ready to go back to my headset, bam, it's back to that, no having to go into the Windows sound settings and switching the audio or anything like that.
Right.
It's just right there on a button. So that I mean, just for that was really fun.
And so like I could see that, like I love headphones to death because they give such clear audio. But like a really cool thing for that would be like if you had a full, 8.1, 7.1 surround sound setup in your house, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you hook your computer up to. And you don't want to necessarily get that reverb you get with a lot of headphones when they have the digital 8.1 surround sound.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of gives like a little echo to it, right?
Yeah.
So you just, you hit that button and you switch over the sound, you play your game, you do everything. And then, if you get on a call with somebody like a Zoom call or a conference call, then boom, you flip back over to the headset just with a touch of a button. So that's pretty cool.
Right. And, I've got, 2 monitors set up on my screen as well.
Right.
I had it set up where, I could hit a button and it would switch, the application from one screen to the next without me having to drag and snap and stuff like that.
Drag and snap,
or, like I know that sounds trivial, but like if you're trying to do something, you want that particular window to be switched over to your main monitor real quick, a click of a button.
I mean, especially if you're dealing with like heavy workload applications, like you're working from home or you're like a creative designer or something, like those macros are God savers because it literally allows you to do 3 to 4 times the amount of work that you could do if you were just having to sit there and spend like a good 10, 15 seconds dragging a window somewhere that you wanted it and getting it the right size. You can already have that all set up.
Exactly.
Okay, go back to work.
Yeah. So, I mean, even if you, like I said, you're not a streamer, you just need some macro buttons and you don't want to have like a whole nother keyboard or, you don't want to, buy a dedicated like numpad to turn into a little macro board or something like that. This is a great little option, that can give you a little more versatility than just a standard keyboard as well.
Yeah.
So that's what I think about it and, some of the uses I had for it. And like I said, Elgato makes a whole bunch of good stuff. Like we talked about capture cards before, Elgato makes them. You know, this little thing here, Elgato makes them. Some studio lighting and stuff for like streaming, Elgato makes it. If it's something you think you might need for streaming, Elgato makes it.
Yeah, they're a pretty good brand. I'm not in that space myself yet. I hope to be, at some point. But I've definitely heard from people who have been in that space that Elgato is one of the most established brands, and they're very, very reliable.
Right. So. Now, with that being said, like any, let's just say like name brand, you're going to pay a little bit for it.
Well, of course, yeah. They're going to charge for their brand for sure.
Right. And,
Apple.
Exactly. Like I said, you got the Apple tax. You got, there's the Samsung tax.
Yeah, there is. It's coming more into play these
the
days.
Razer tax.
Yep.
The Alienware tax. I mean, so, Elgato, they do charge a little more than what some of their competitors, but a lot of the times you get that quality behind it too.
Right, and that's something to be said of itself. If you buy a little cheap knockoff, right, and it quits working in like 4 or 5 months, and then you have to end up paying for it again, you might as well just paid the tax and bought the name brand anyway.
Exactly. So I mean, like you said, if it's just going to fail after a year anyway, if you buy the name brand one and it lasts 2 years, well, it just paid for itself anyway.
Right. Now, that's not to say that non-name brand stuff is always not good. Because I'm a firm believer of, if you're going to get a quality product out of a non-name brand, go the non-name brand.
Sure.
As long as they give you a quality product and back that up. But
right, for sure.
there's definitely some knockoffs out there that are not worth getting. I figured that out with a tablet one time, and it was terrible.
Yeah. There are definitely those things that it's not worth, just not paying for, the reputable, it's going to work brand.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like you said, and especially in like the Android tablet space, you can get some really cheap stuff, which granted, things have gotten so good now, even some of the cheaper stuff is finally starting to get good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a $200 Android tablet versus a $100 Android tablet is usually a huge difference.
Yeah.
For even that small of a difference.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think how just micro you can get into that, but if the $100 even has like a gig less, onboard memory than the $200 one, it's going to be about twice as slow as that.
Right.
So
with that being said, though, I've got something coming in this weekend that I think you're really going to like, and that will probably be an extreme competitor for this thing right here because it's in the same price range.
Okay.
It's going to be, I think, when it's done doing, because like kind of right now they're doing it in batches because of everything that's going on and whatnot.
Right,
it's hard to make them.
We're still trying to get back to normal manufacturing standards.
It's hard to make a whole bunch, but it's going to be a normal everyday product. Once they can get back to that point. But like I caught it early, and I got a pre-order bonus for $20 off, so it's
awesome.
like $80. So same thing as this. But like I said, I think right now for their next batch they're doing $10 off, and then hopefully. When their next batch after that, when they're actually start to get the manufacturing, it'll be a $99 product from my understanding.
Okay.
But it's going to be something, it's not going to be quite like this, but it should be able to do a lot of the same stuff as this, but hopefully more.
Interesting.
And I think you're going to like it, and I think that's going to be something cool. I'm going to try to hold off open. I'm going to try to unbox it on here if I can.
Okay,
if I can keep the willpower in.
Yeah, that's hard sometimes. You get that brand new toy, you want to open it.
I'm pretty excited about it because I've been waiting for it for a while. Because I think I pre-ordered this thing like a year or more ago.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, because it was because they've done like different prototypes for this particular thing before, and I've seen. Some other places talk about it, and this is this version here is they're finally getting to kind of like a mass production, like a mass market product, not just a couple hundred here, out of my garage kind of thing. It's like this becoming like a mass production item finally. Awesome. So,
well, you piqued cool. My interest. I'm definitely
if you like this, I think you're gonna like this thing, and it's gonna be really cool. So definitely tune in next week. I'll be definitely bringing that through.
Cool. Okay, so back on this one, is this a plug and play product, or does it come with the software that you install?
You do have to have Elgato software for this. Their Stream Deck software. Speaking of the Stream Deck software, you can actually download a Stream Deck application on like your phone or tablet.
Okay, cool.
And sync it up with your computer and actually use your phone or tablet as a Stream Deck as well. I actually forgot about that until just now.
Oh wow, nice. Yeah,
so I've never personally used that, but yeah, you can actually do that too. But you do have to have their software for this to work. It's not just you can't just plug it in. I think somebody on the Linux side was working on a software because Elgato doesn't have a Linux software for it, but I think somebody has been working on like an open source software, on the Linux side where you could still use this. Maybe not to the same functionality extent, but still be able to use it on Linux side as well.
It's funny how like we read each other's minds because my next question was literally about to be: is that PC or is that Linux and PC?
for all intents and purposes, it's PC. I think possibly Mac. Don't hold me to that because I haven't dove into the Mac software much. But there, for all intents and purposes at the moment, it is a PC software only thing. Okay. But that's one thing about the Linux community. Somebody is always making something for it.
Absolutely. So. That is one of the things that I absolutely love about the Linux community is they hack so much stuff. Not, in a sense that they go into servers and steal shit, but they just hack stuff and repurpose it to work for Linux, which is so cool.
Right. But yeah. So that's about what all I had for this today.
Okay. All right, cool.
Why don't we throw it over to you, Mike? Give us some SATA knowledge.
Yeah. All right. So today, previously we talked about some SSD drives and the drive.
Right, that SATA dock that you
plug in through USB and do stuff with that. So what I'm talking about today is the actual SATA cable. Now, If you're PC building or if you've had any experience with it whatsoever in the past, this is the cable that physically connects that drive to your motherboard to read all of the information and pass the information back and forth.
Right. And that's going to be, your standard hard drives or your 2.5-inch solid state drives.
Right.
Pretty much anything that's not like that M.2
Exactly.
drive that we were talking about. This is essentially the same purpose, just different connector.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and even on the bay, this connector is on there, but it's not in, wire form. It's directly connected, built into that bay to work through the USB interface. So, so a little bit of back history on the USB. This was actually preceded by what's known as the PATA, which was the parallel ATA. And that was it was formed in 1986 and then mainstream released in, I think it was 1989 is when it was mainstream, after it was theorized. But anyway, so that's the old form factor. The SATA form factor was theorized in 2000 and came out in 2003.
Right. And like you said, the PATA parallel ATA connector, SATA serial ATA connector.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for going into terminology there.
Hey, I'm surprised I knew that.
Well, when you've built as many PCs as I have, so when you get into that, you start to learn about what you're building. So, but so the serial ATA connector SATA, when it first came out, it was in the 1.0 version that did 100 megabytes per second. And then there's been a bunch of iterations to it so far, but what we are up to right now is the 6 gigabyte per second, which is the mainstream form factor.
Right. The third, the SATA
3.0, absolutely. Yeah. And so what that does is that gets us up to essentially 600 megabytes read-write speed.
Right.
So the internal, how it works is the connectors each connect to, of course, your motherboard and the drive itself. And there's microconductors in here, which is what we talked about previously, where you've got gold or silver or whatever, and it passes that electronic signal through so that it can be deciphered in binary language. Of course, you've got some other stuff. We're starting to go into some other stuff now, where I'm also kind of interested to see, now that we have Thunderbolt, if maybe this starts to get phased out later down the road and we just start to go to Thunderbolt.
Right. Well, I think that's pretty much kind of where we're heading, because, you say Thunderbolt, the M.2 and stuff like that, that all uses PCI Express interface.
Right, exactly.
So, and I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see, maybe keep the SATA actual connector, but the actual SATA connect, instead of it being a SATA interface, it moves over to a PCI Express interface, maybe.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that would give you, and what I like about that, you could get those 2.5-inch drives. We're seeing them, those up to 8 terabyte. And we're starting to see the M.2, the smaller ones, but with those 2.5-inch drives, you can obviously get more chips and stuff on one for storage.
Yeah.
So, if we were able to maybe use something like this for, 2.5-inch drives, think about how big those drives could get and still get those PCI Express speeds.
Absolutely. That's a real good point.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the U.2 connector was supposed to be something along that lines.
I think it was theorized.
Because I know that U.2 connector is still around, because you can still find it on some motherboards.
Yeah.
Because I think Intel was working with something like that. That was an Intel connector, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Thunderbolt was
been a lot of
Intel
products that Intel and some other people have worked on, kind of theorized and started to put in the practice, but then they doubled back and were like, no, we're going to go with another standard.
Right. So I would be interested to to see the actual SATA connectors move over to a PCI Express interface, so we could still use physically bigger drives.
Absolutely. And you're talking about the speed increase too. Right now with the 6 gigabytes, that's basically 600 megabytes read-write speed. Thunderbolt's up to 4.6 gigabytes read-write speed right now.
Yeah. I think it's a 40 gigabit connection.
Yeah,
is what it is, and that's over 4 PCI Express lanes.
Yes.
So,
it's ridiculously fast.
So, and I mean, if you think about it, I mean, your PCI Express 4 M.2 drives, I mean, they're hitting 7,000 megabytes.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
So I mean, you know, what is that? Hold on. I don't feel like mathing in my head today. Where's my calculator at? Here it is. So 7,000 megabytes divided by 8 bits. So I mean, that's 875 megabits.
Yeah, that's insanely fast.
And so I mean, that's not even saturating that at all.
No.
That's not even close.
No.
Because I mean, you know, Thunderbolt 4 is pushing plus that.
Yeah. So
I mean, the speed is possible. We just got to get the stuff, you know, finally all on the same page.
Everybody's got to get together, create the form factor, and you know, go from there. Just which is exactly, you know, how this was come up with after, you know, we started coming out with some faster stuff, and everybody's like, man, PAT is just really not cutting it anymore. Then, you know, we took that form factor and rebuilt it and designed it to do what we need to do, and SATA came out. So
right.
I think where I would definitely say we're kind of at that spot right now where people are like, okay, we've got Thunderbolt, we've got all this other stuff. Now's probably the time we need to get together and start trying to come up with a new form factor. So I think we could see that probably in the next, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years.
Right. And, you know, USB-C might be that form factor.
True.
I mean, that's what Thunderbolt 4 is using. It's using that USB 4, USB-C, you know, Type-C connector specification for Thunderbolt 4. Because Intel finally, you know, let that go and let USB have that spec to, you know, standardize that spec.
Yeah, and that's definitely one thing. Does that new iPhone have USB-C on it? Have they went to USB-C?
The iPhone 12 is not on USB-C. It's still on the Lightning port, which is still a USB 2 connection.
Right.
So that's dumb. But like we were talking about in the Apple event last week, you know, the new iPad Pros
has USB-C.
They have Thunderbolt 4 on that USB-C connection.
Right. So there's even Apple, which is notorious for keeping their own form factor, is starting to kind of move a lot of stuff over to the USB-C style.
Right.
So you're right. Maybe USB-C is that next form factor that we go to.
So, I mean, it's definitely, you know, got the potential to be there. Because, like I said, I mean, it's already running over PCI Express.
Right.
And, you know, that's where everything's kind of moving to. It's moving to that PCI Express. So, I mean, something we're going to probably start seeing more and more of, too, with that. Because that... the main speed you're getting from that is those links are directly to your CPU.
Right, absolutely.
So, like, take your typical Ryzen and finally, you know, your Intel. They used to only have like 16 lanes to, you know, for your graphics card because your graphics card was on a 16-lane PCI Express.
That's what that X16 is, exactly.
Exactly. So, but when the M.2 started showing up, you know, putting that storage on the PCI Express as well, initially, you know, I had to go through the chipset, and then the chipset connected, you know, to everything else, you know, able to communicate to your CPU. But, you know, that's an extra step when you've got to go from here to here to here, instead of directly to the CPU. So, you know, now it's more common for your consumer class processors to have 20 PCI Express lanes. That's why I think the new Rocket Lakes have the 20 PCI Express lanes. I know the Ryzen ones have 20 PCI Express lanes, you know, on that. And then as you move up to, like, you know, Threadripper and stuff like that, you get more and more lanes on your CPU.
Threadripper is ridiculous.
But I think that's probably going to start trickling down, you know, more to the consumers because we're going to start getting more and more stuff over the PCI Express lanes instead of over SATA or something.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. Like, anytime you add an extra step into it, and when they designed the original motherboards, it was designed on just a straight one-shot system, right? Like they wanted all of their processes to go through one micro conductor lane to be supported everything, and that's why everything was on the board when they first came out. So anytime you add another process into it, you know, even if we're talking about milliseconds or micro milliseconds, it all is an extra step that it has to go through, which can produce lag at some point.
Right. You know, you start getting that latency, and you give that extra chance to create an error as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, that's a really good point. I like that. USB-C could be the next form factor.
Right.
I think.
And, I mean, you know, they have that internal USB, you know, USB 3, which is now moving to USB 4. They have those internal connectors already.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wouldn't be hard just to replace SATA with that maybe, too, with those internal connectors and have, those connectors plug up.
And especially with the size of USB-C compared to, this big SATA connection, they could put potentially double the amount on.
Right. But also, how many drives nowadays are out there in the world that are using SATA right now? So SATA's not going anywhere anytime soon either.
Absolutely. And it's, it's kind of like what we were talking about the other day with like the new storage stuff that they were coming out with, where they were experimenting with crystal and all that stuff. This is the normal form factor right now, and this is not going anywhere for 10 to 15 years. Right. I would be willing to bet.
Right. And you know what, another thing, like you were saying, when you were talking about, refining, when they switched over from the PAD to the SATA cable,
right.
They wanted that uniform factor.
Forever.
Right. They wanted that uniform factor. So it doesn't matter, what brand hard drive you get. It doesn't matter if you get a standard hard drive or a solid state drive, what size drive you get. It all uses that same SATA connector too, which is kind of in the same vein as what, USB-C was trying to do, one port for everything.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, it's a real good standard, and, I think it's brought, like you said, this was what, early 90s?
So the SATAs was 2003, and then
so
the
early
PADAs
2000s
were like late 80s, early.
So, I mean, here we are 20 years with this cable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's definitely,
in one iteration or the other, absolutely.
Right. So. It's just kind of like everything else, in the computers, it just keeps getting refined and better and better.
Right.
So, yeah, really cool stuff.
So that's what I've got today. Any questions or anything?
No, I think you did a pretty good job covering it. Okay. These are, like we were saying, they're just cheap cables. Every time you buy a motherboard, there's almost at least one in there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, they just give them away to you.
Yeah, the last motherboard I bought, it came with, I think, 5. So, of course, I lost like 3 of those, and I had to buy another one. So.
Right. So, if you ever have to replace a hard drive on your desktop, you're going to see this cable. So.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah. No, I think that was a great little piece there today, Mike.
All right, well, thank you. So, that about wraps it up for us today. Thanks again for joining us at Show and Tech. We hope you enjoyed the content.
Yeah.
If you have any ideas for content, as always, leave us comments. Let us know, what content do you want to see? Do you like it when, like last time when we broke down some tech stuff, some tech releases and things like that?
I've already,
more,
I've been getting feedback from my dad. I think he keeps suggesting topics that are like literally to the moon.
Well, yeah.
So,
but some of that stuff can be interesting sometimes.
Right. But that might be a little too in depth out there.
That's
maybe.
True. Yeah.
Maybe not what we're trying to do, but we might. You never know. We might look into it. So, yeah, make sure you hit that bell, hit like, subscribe. Like Mike said, leave some comments, show us some love, and we'll try to keep these coming.
Thank you, guys. Peace.
Have a good one.